And, I think as far as the reality, it's like where you open Armageddon's Son is really just with this absolutely tragic moment where Martin Denton, you've mentioned him, he's an older detective. He sort of is Erik's mentor, is how I see him. And you really throw him in the deep end. You give him any parent's worst nightmare. He has to deal with the death of his son right at the first of the book, and then you throw him in even deeper into this whole ethereal concept. And at one point when we were chatting in email, you mentioned that Martin was influenced by your dad, and I was wondering, how did your dad inspire this character? I know we all kind of pull from real people oftentimes, and we take the bits and places of people that we know as writers, but what were some of the specific ways that you used your dad and maybe others to inform this character and make him a very realistic, believable character?
Oh boy, I don't want to get weepy in this. I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional, but Martin Denton is my father. That character is James Emil Ballan. My father was the greatest man I've ever known, my best friend and mentor for the 24 years I was blessed to be his son. And God took him too soon for me. When I was 24, I lost my dad and my mom. And I wanted to pay tribute to the man that he was. Erik, the character of Erik Knight, a lot of it is me in my early years. And insecure, kind of brash, I'll lash out with a fist and a sidekick before I think something through. And that's kind of how Erik Knight was in the beginning, and that's how kind of he is. And Martin Denton was the calming influence. He was the compass that always pointed north. And my dad was like that. I mean, my father always had the, you're running into this thing without, let's think this through. Before you do something stupid, let's talk about this. Let's think this through. And Martin Denton is the same way with Erik. He's like, don't run off emotionally. Let's think things through. And that relationship builds through the first and the second book. It goes from, an employer-employee relationship to where Denton is actually working for a firm for the CIA. He recruits Erik, and he's his handler in the second book, and helps Erik deal with a lot of the problems he's going through in the second book. And then in the third book, where I really made Martin Denton the focus of the character, I wanted to really bring the father and son relationship that the two of them actually had, which mirrors the relationship my father and I actually had. I love my dad to death, and he did forge the man I am today. He filed all those rough, aggressive edges out of me, and I could go to him with anything and seek his wisdom. And as Erik would go to Martin and say, look at this, and Martin would always be aware to put it in perspective, especially with the soul market scene where, I'll give away terms. How do you deal with what he dealt with coming out of that? Crushing that globe, and I don't want to give away the whole bunch of the book, but dealing with death again at the second time around. I mean, Martin Denton is there to help him through that. And the one church scene I wrote, where Erik realizes that there is something more that killed Martin Denton's son, when Martin goes, just tell me, did he suffer? And instead of telling the truth, he lies. It's like, I owe him the truth, but I know the truth would hurt him. I'd rather lie and spare his feelings because it won't cost me again. I'm lying in church, but I think God will let this one go. And I take their relationship, where Martin Denton is the father that Erik lost, and Erik is the son that Martin abandoned. They're surrogates for each other, even though they won't publicly acknowledge that. It's obvious by the fourth book that's the relationship that they have. And it, you know, the character of Martin Denton, the manner, the dry humor, the throwing a dry one-liner when you least expect it. That's my dad. My dad would always diffuse something by looking at me and telling me a one-liner joke out of nowhere. He knew how to turn my button off, and Martin knows how to turn Erik's button off. Rage, rage, boom, no. And that character is everything. The compassion, the sensitivity, the wisdom, and the ability to be a mentor is my dad. That Martin Denton is Jim Ballan. You know, there was no drawing. I made the character exactly the way I remembered my father.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is it really comes across because you can tell that these two characters just love each other. They are, you know, they really do have a father-son relationship, and it was just very believable. And I thought that it's one of many strong parts of the book.